As the new high school year begins, some seniors spot the first-year gigantic Iwashimizu, and they notice that despite his size, he is a big coward, so they start ganging up on him. They also notice another first-year student named Jin who is about a toad's size, but when they taunt him about his short height, he starts beating them up. Iwashimizu then carries Jin away, fearing that the seniors may gang up on him, and thanks him for saving him. Jin clarifies that he was only dealing with them due to their cheap remarks about him, and they both introduce themselves to each other. As they walk away together, Jin reveals that he hates useless tall trunks like him who can't do anything, while people underestimate shorties like him and treat him like a child just because of his height. Iwashimizu's old friend Hakiaji then slams into him and welcomes him to the school. He then invites him and Jin to watch his team's match of rugby, which apparently Jin knows nothing about. Hakiaji tells him that rugby is a sport in which anyone can become a star, and as the practice match of the team begins, Iwashimizu explains the rules of rugby to him. He reveals that due to his big size they also tried to hire him in middle school, and even consoles Jin that in rugby, size doesn't matter since rugby teams have persons of every size. Jin realizes that he may be able to become a star in rugby, and after the match finishes, he accepts Hakiaji's offer to join the team. Meanwhile, Iwashimizu declines to join and walks away. The next day, the rugby club continues recruiting new people, and Jin comes to meet the strongest player of the team named Sekizun. Sekizun calls him short, so he attacks him, but Sekizun easily tackles him and even scolds him afterwards. He then asks Hakiaji why Iwashimizu won't join the team, and afterwards he drags Iwashimizu away from his book club meeting to the ground. He gives Iwashimizu a tackle bag and charges at him with full speed, but Iwashimizu steps aside at the last moment. He takes the tackle bag himself and asks Iwashimizu to tackle him, but Iwashimizu refuses his request. He tells him that he knows how Iwashimizu ended up injuring his friend Miyuki in middle school by tackling him, and assures him that he isn't weak like his friend. Iwashimizu then tackles him in anger, which sends him flying, but he recovers quickly and announces that rugby is very fun. The next day, the rugby team welcomes the newcomers, and all the beginners go with Hakiaji to get briefed, while Iwashimizu and another experienced rugby player Uharano go with team captain Sekizun. Hakiaji starts guiding the newcomers, but Jin demands to tackle someone right off the bat. He doesn't stop yapping about this, so Sekizun tells him to tackle him. He then tackles Sekizun, who throws him in the air as if he's a fly. He tries to tackle him again, but Sekizun stops him and tells him to try out a training drill. He even offers to reward him with 5 attempts at tackling if he does the drill, so Jin immediately agrees. Hakiaji then tells him to carry the ball on his knees like a turtle back and forth the ground till their practice finishes. As the practice resumes, Jin continues this charade even when the others make fun of him, and doesn't stop even after 3 hours despite the difficulty. At the end, he becomes too tired to even tackle Sekizun. He tackles Sekizun the next day, who easily blocks him, and continues the same drill the next few days. He continues tackling and doing the drill daily, but he also keeps observing the other players to learn more about tackling. Later, he shares this with Iwashimizu and asks him to let him practice tackling with him to take down Sekizun. The next time he tackles Sekizun after their practice ends, Sekizun notices that he's getting stronger and better at tackling. He keeps getting thrown off, but at his last tackle, he brings out his ultimate move by throwing his weight below Sekizun's knees and manages to throw him over his shoulder. This surprises everyone, and Yumino, the team manager, then throws water over him to cool him off. Sekizun announces to his team the next day that they have a practice game against Keijo High next week. Since Keijo High team is a semifinalist for Kanagawa Prefecture who has beaten their team previously, everyone whines about the match. Yumino then guides the beginners about the team formation, and another teammate Ebumi makes fun of Jin for having the same winger position as him. They all begin arguing. Meanwhile, Iwashimizu doesn't want to participate in the match since his friend from middle school Miyuki is also in the opposite team. A new day arrives, and the gang travels to play a match with Keijo High, one of the Kanagawa region's top 4 teams. The vice captain named Tara meets the boys at the gate, but mistakes Sekizun for fatty Hakiaji, something only a blind man would do. Sekizun announces the starting lineup, but surprisingly keeps Jin out of it. Jin takes offense to this and questions why the timid Iwashimizu is starting over him. Miyuki gets serious all of a sudden and tells Jin to cool it, because he hasn't seen what Iwashimizu is actually capable of. Yumino watches from the bench with Jin and Ebumi. She explains the rules of the game to the empty head while the team gets the socks kicked out of them. As the game continues, it becomes clear to both teams that Iwashimizu is the weak link and the Keijo boys decide to target him. Miyuki gets the ball and finally gets his long-awaited clash with Iwashimizu, but Iwashimizu suddenly remembers how he injured Miyuki in middle school during a match and freezes in place. Miyuki gets angry and tells Iwashimizu to get off the field if he's not serious about playing. The game continues and Jin gets frustrated seeing Iwashimizu. He shouts at him to get serious and Iwashimizu finally comes to his senses, stopping Miyuki by an inch. The tide of the game changes as Iwashimizu starts racking up points and bullying the opposite defenders. Despite his best efforts, Keijo keeps the lead and starts racking up points again against the weak ensemble of mediocrity. Yumino says that it's unfair since Keijo is a private school, and they get physically strong players through scouting and have proper resources. The one who breaks the momentum this time is not Iwashimizu but Sekizun as he tackles Tera with all his force. Tera recalls the past when Keijo played against a young Sekizun and his team. He remembers how Sekizun kept practicing for an hour after losing the game, and that was when he started respecting him. Back in the present, a senior at the bench argues that no one in their team works harder than Sekizun, but rugby is a team sport, so all 15 players have to work hard to actually accomplish something. At the field, Uharano says that it's time to change the flow of the game. The game continues as the team faces off against Keijo High, and things get rough as they go. Keijo moves the ball fast, making it impossible to react. Uharano shows off his skill, making Miyuki look like an amateur. Uharano throws a no-look pass which throws off his own teammate named Eyes as Jin watches from the bench being clueless. Yumino explains rugby positioning, but his brain clearly isn't built for it. Keijo keeps dominant position, and Uharano gets figured and locked down by Keijo. Just when things look hopeless, he pulls off a drop goal, shocking everyone since even Keijo didn't see it coming. Keijo straighten their backs and get serious. Their defense tightens as the team struggles to pass the ball. Keijo smells blood but fortunately, halftime hits. Keijo's bench mocks the team but the seniors set the record straight and tell them to stay locked in. On the other side, Ebumi wants in for the next half, but Sekizun shuts him down because of the good old rule of no practice, no play. Sekizun says that rugby is a team sport and keeps the same lineup. The second half begins, and Keijo switches tactics. Instead of outrunning the team, they overpower them. Tera plays out wide, tricking the team into swarming the flanks. The middle opens up, and Keijo takes full advantage. The team's defense collapses because of this and a sub is needed to fill in the place. Meanwhile, Iwashimizu panics because he can't handle the pressure. Jin finally gets the call to sub in and he gets all fired up. The midget doesn't know the game, but he sure knows how to tackle. Jin hits the field but Keijo underestimates him. Tera comes charging and Jin braces for contact. He stops Tera for a second, but Tera keeps pushing through sheer force. Jin hits the ground and gets pissed at himself but Sekizun motivates him to keep going. Another run starts and Jin charges again. This time, he connects making Keijo stumble and the tide finally starts shifting. The final moments of the game tick away and Keijo pushes for another try. The team scrambles to stop them. Jin chases down number 10, forcing him wide but the angle is bad. As the last play of the game happens, Keijo misses the kick and the match ends. The team loses the match on points, but barely. Jin feels useless but Sekizun disagrees because he held up Tera long enough and gave them a chance. As Keijo walks off, Jin shouts after them and says that they're going down next time. Sometime later, Sekizun announces a week-long training camp in school and vows to train the club like hell. The training camp arrives and everyone gets to work. The second years take time out of their training to give advice to the new noobs while Iwashimizu trains harder than ever since he got motivation from Miyuki after the match. Suddenly, a homeless dude arrives at the field and pushes his weight around like he's a national coach. As it turns out, he actually was a national coach and Jin got him on board to help the school. The guy named Komori Shingo starts by ripping into Sekizun for his inefficient training techniques and tells him that he'll lose half his members by summer. He continues the roast by telling Sekizun that he's stiff since he had no proper coaching. Komori decides to leave since he's not welcome but Sekizun stops him and asks for help. Komori pits Sekizun and Iwashimizu against the two shorter guys Jin and Kamo as a demonstration. Jin and Kamo manage to score a point but Iwashimizu returns the favor by equaling the score using his massive size. Komori digs into Iwashimizu and calls him lucky. He says next time, he won't be so lucky and tells the team to take a break. They get a well-deserved mealtime in the home economics class and nighttime arrives. The team talks and say that Komori ain't really passing the vibe check with, but Sekizun says that they can improve with his teachings and become stronger. The next day, they arrive at the field and see that Komori has set up poles and wires for practice. The team starts the practice, but everybody struggles, and by the end of it, they are all twice as tired. Komori gets all the thick boys and trains them separately to handle huge amounts of weight since they have to be the strongest in the team. Later, Komori starts offensive scrums, but as soon as they start, Uharano drops a catch and the lineman gets angry. A scuffle almost breaks out, but the peach-loving Hakiauji steps in and breaks it apart. Not with his hands, but with his words, while also dropping some gems of wisdom on the club members as well. The day ends and Hakiauji and Sekizun catch Komori leaving as they wash themselves. They timidly ask him what time they should gather tomorrow, and he replies 5 o'clock. The second day of training camp kicks off as Jin dreams of scoring a game-winning Ultra Super try, only to wake up and find everyone still dead asleep. Meanwhile, Komori sets out again from his, but his wife catches him and says that he's overworking himself. The team kicks off day 2 of camp with brutal drills, and tensions run high when Ebumi lashes out at a teammate for messing up a pass. Komori shuts it down, forcing the whole squad to run laps as punishment. Later, Komori questions the team's goal, and while the seniors confidently say Hanazono, Jin has no idea what that is. The boys explain that it's Japan's biggest high school rugby tournament, and Jin gets fired up. He says that he's in, but Komori warns that if they keep bickering, they'll never get there. That night, Ebumi sneaks out for secret training, but Sekizun catches him. They go for a run, and Ebumi finally opens up. He says he hates losing and can't stand weak teammates. He reveals that his previous seniors were soft, and it made him furious. Sekizun relates, remembering a former captain who pushed himself to the limit after every loss. This resonates with Ebumi, who for the first time, he lets his guard down. Meanwhile, Jin catches wind of Ebumi's secret training and, in classic Jin fashion, makes a scene. Kamo and Uharano join in, and soon enough, the whole squad is running under the moonlight. By morning, secret training isn't so secret anymore. Komori pushes them even harder, hammering in the reality that Hanazono is no joke. The team struggles with passing drills, but Komori doesn't let up, reminding them that half-hearted effort won't cut it. Komori notices the cracks in the team skill-wise, and realizes that they're far from ready. He hits them with a reality check that raw talent won't get them to the top, but if they push past the pain and go all in, they might just have a shot. His words start to sink in, and despite being dead tired, the team digs deep and keeps running. Training intensifies and Komori reflects on his new role. He admits that while he might be aura farming all the time, he doesn't know how to inspire young players, but watching them push forward makes him want to try. Since Jin's brothers used to avoid him like the plague, he excitedly gets up to play rugby with the others. They then play a 12 versus 12 game with each other in which Jin gets clubbed with other starters such as Sekizun and Iwashimizu. The game begins and Jin gets the ball once through tackling, but Ebumi manages to snatch it from him and makes a goal. On the next try, the ball gets thrown to Jin, but he is unable to catch it. On the next play, Jin runs too forward and collides with Iwashimizu, due to which they lose the ball and the other team scores a goal. Their team keeps losing goals, and at the end Komori announces that their team is losing the match because of Jin. He explains that since Jin doesn't know anything other than tackling, he is pulling the team behind, so he subs him out for the second half. Jin recalls that he always wanted to play sports in a team, but no one would keep him due to his height, and he wonders whether he's the problem. The remaining match finalizes with Jin's team losing, and as a penalty, their team practices tackling. Komori tells Iwashimizu that Jin hasn't even started playing rugby. Afterwards, everyone searches for Jin and Iwashimizu finds him on the roof. He asks him whether he does tackling to take out his anger on the bigger guys and explains that even he practices a lot to better his abilities. He confesses that he joined their team because of Jin's motivating words only. The next and last day of training camp, they all train and afterwards have another match amongst themselves in which Jin doesn't participate. He observes the match and feels thrilled to watch such an energetic teamwork. Finally, he gets to play on the team for the last 5 minutes, and when he sees an opportunity to take the ball, he rushes towards it and grabs it. Ebumi then rushes at him to steal it, but Iwashimizu blocks his attack, and due to Jin, they end up scoring a goal and securing a win. After the match, Komori reminds everyone that rugby is not suitable for selfish players and officially welcomes Jin to the team. Komori meets up the club advisor named Yoshida to talk about the club. Komori is blunt with Yashida, telling him to step back and let him take control of the team's development, and says that the youngsters need his guidance to make something of their life. Komori gives a passionate speech about showing the kids the starting line and guiding them to greatness, but doesn't sugarcoat the fact that the team has a lot of growing up to do. Komori arranges a practice game against Sagami, a team that came second in last year's preliminaries. He tells the team that their advisor will be watching the game. Next day, the Sagami team enters the ground and their coach is excited to meet with the former national level coach. The moment Sagami steps onto the field, it gets clear they're here to win, and they're ready to play dirty if it means they'll get to crush their opponent. The game starts and their game plan involves trash talking and psychological warfare, which rattles the players and they lose focus. Right off the gate, they make a foul play and tackle Iwashimizu, who gets hurt. Number 14 on the enemy team tells their captain about Iwashimizu and how he beat him in the semifinals, so the bad blood is still there. Despite their efforts, the team struggles to keep up due to Sagami's dirty plays and psychological warfare, and the pressure mounts as Sagami dominates the field. Komori observes the game closely, noting how Sagami's underhanded strategies are effectively disrupting their team's rhythm. The team's morale begins to waver as they realize the gap in skill and experience between them and their opponents. They target Uharano by talking about his little brother who quit rugby because of Uharano. This rattles him and he loses composure on his own teammates. The next victim is Iwashimizu as they talk foul about his former middle school captain, making him almost change the sport from rugby to UFC. As the game progresses, the team's players start to lose their composure, and their coordination takes a big hit. They get pushed back on a scramble, and afterwards Uharano makes a costly mistake, so Komori has no choice but to bench him since he is clearly on the verge of losing his sanity. Komori watches intently, recognizing that this match is a harsh but necessary lesson for the players. With a smug look on his face, the advisor suddenly appears and tells Komori that this is why he doesn't support the club. On Komori's instructions, Ebumi replaces Uharano and joins the match. The other team thinks that another snowflake has joined the game, but as the match begins, Ebumi keeps up with the fast ball and scores a very difficult goal. The match's tide turns, and in the next play, once again Ebumi tackles number 14 one-on-one and scores the goal over him. Number 14 gets very scared of him and Yashida comments that they are relying on one-man talent only. As the team starts getting cocky about their goals, Sagami team intercepts their moves in the next play, and through coordinated teamwork they score a goal which turns the tides again. The first half ends with a huge gap in Sagami's favor, but Komori still compliments the team's efforts and comments that now they have an aim to reach. He then advises them to steal Sagami's techniques and to learn from them. Jin also advises Iwashimizu to stand up erect to appear strong, and despite their loss, the team fools around with each other. The second half begins, and although Ebumi and the others do their best, Sagami does coordinated attacks and keeps scoring goals. Yashida the Grump Lord comments that the match seems pretty one-sided, but the boys still strive hard and gives Sagami a fair challenge. As Sagami nears another goal, Sekizun stops the goal with his body and ends up getting injured on his face. Komori bandages him up, and despite his injury he looks happy since he is playing rugby. He then resumes playing, which scares Sagami's players. Sekizun keeps throwing himself at the players just to stop the goals and maintains the momentum of the whole game despite their lack of goals. Yashida recalls that previous rugby teams would not pay much attention to him even though he tried to advise them, but he gets surprised to witness the current team's energy. During the last 10 minutes, the team tries once again to score a goal and Sekizun charges at Sagami once again. Even Yashida yells out once about a knock-on, and the team manage to block one of Sagami's goals. The scrimmage against Sagami ends with the boys reflecting on their performance. The loss stings, but Komori highlights the progress they've made, emphasizing the importance of learning from the experience. Jin sits apart, replaying the game in his mind, and gets frustrated by what could have been. To shift the mood, Komori announces a trip to the beach, which excites the boys. However, the excitement fades when he reveals they'll be running 6 kilometers to get there. The team groans but sets off, sweat dripping under the sun as they push through the intense run, and their exhaustion grows with every step. At the beach, Komori puts the team through a series of unconventional drills. Wheelbarrow races in the sand leave the players exhausted. Next, shovels are handed out, and the team digs holes under the scorching sun. When they complain about this exercise, Komori tells that strength and endurance is the key. Komori then gathers the forwards for sumo wrestling in the sand, explaining how the low, powerful stances translate to effective posture. The players grapple with each other, and their competitive spirits flare up despite the fatigue. Soon, they begin to understand the purpose behind the grueling exercises. As the sun sets, the team relaxes by the water. The boys' conversations turn to positions, with the freshmen wondering about where they might fit in. Jin sits alone, staring at the horizon as he can't help but still be frustrated. Sekizun approaches him and Jin trauma dumps on him like an art student as to why he's still playing. He mentions his brother, who once loved rugby but was forced to watch from the sidelines. Jin says that this is the determination to prove himself. Nearby, Uharano and Ebumi exchange sharp words, a beautiful rivalry forming as they debate their roles on the team and who deserves to be in the starting lineup. The next day, Jin and Reita sneak off to watch Ryoin Academy, Kanagawa's reigning champions, in action. Blending into the crowd, they observe the precision and power of Ryoin's players. They observe from the shadows that Sakido, the star flanker, dominates the field with his speed and technique, while his twin brother, Kokyutu, towers over opponents with raw strength. Jin watches with absolute focus, realizing the gap between his team and the best in the region. The experience humbles him but also inspires him, which increases his resolve to improve even brighter than ever. They get caught by a huge Ryoin player who says he's late due to eating too much. The player named Zanba Ryujin takes the field as scrum half, a position typically reserved for smaller, agile players. His weird style immediately stands out. Instead of quick passes, Zanba charges forward with brute force, claiming large chunks of the field before releasing the ball. This strategy catches the opponent team off guard, and they struggle to defend against his sheer size and power. Ryujin makes all the right plays and the show-off has all the girls fangirling over him. Reita explains to the dummy and says that imagine having 2 Sekizuns on your time. That's how strong Ryujin is. Ryoin easily crushes the team 91-0. After the match, as Jin and Reita walk home, they encounter a sports shop that sells rugby equipment. They go in to take a peek and Reita explains the different types of shoes of Jin. He asks Jin what he thinks about Ryoin and Jin says that he's even more motivated to train now. This relaxes Reita, who proceeds to tell Jin about overcoming rugby struggles even though he is short. Jin inspires Reita that they can beat Ryoin, who is feeling hopeless after watching them play. As Reita tries to grab a pair of cleats, a tall guy helps him who turns out to be Sakido. Jin and Sakido bond over being absolute nerds. Jin takes this chance to ask Sakido questions about rugby. As always, the main character has his heart on his sleeve as he claims that he has no idea how to get better at the game since he also wants to be a flanker. But Sakido gives him some words of motivation that brighten his mood. Sakido then challenges Jin to a game of tag in the park to test if Jin will make a good flanker or not. Jin tries his hardest but isn't able to touch even a hair of Sakido. Sakido tells him that it's hopeless for him, but his brother Kokyutu steps in. He asks Jin to tackle him. His big size doesn't scare Jin, who leaps at him like a wildcat but gets picked up and thrown back like a normal cat. Jin keeps tackling and manages to land a good one, which surprises Kokyutu. He starts laughing and tells Sakido that he's just like how he was when he first started playing rugby. As the brothers leave, Kokyutu tells Jin that he will make a good flanker and Jin requests them to play against him when he gets better. Komori advises the team to aim to level up through playing with strong players since they will be playing with Keijo again. Keijo's coach Yuji hopes to learn more from Komori while both the team's members start getting along with each other. Jin announces that he wants to act as the flanker and then joins Keijo's scrum to learn even more. He tries out a formation with Keijo's members but he ends up not performing well. But they don't press him much since it's his first time in a scrum as a flanker. Jin asks them to include him in more scrums and both teams practice with each other. Soon a practice game gets announced and all the players get mixed and clubbed in 2 teams with Iwashimizu and Miyuki in 1 team. The game begins and Sekizun takes the lead as he charges ahead with the ball. Iwashimizu fills Miyuki in about how Sekizun throws the ball away as he gets tackled, and Miyuki uses this information to steal the ball from Sekizun. Miyuki throws the ball to Iwashimizu, who then scores a goal for the team. Iwashimizu then advises Miyuki to stay clear of Ebumi, who is on the other team, so their team changes tactics a bit. In the next play, Miyuki's team keeps the ball away from Ebumi as they play. However, one of the other team's players kicks the ball to the in-goal area. As a result, Ebumi and Mitsuki's team's fastest player run towards the goal, but Ebumi manages to reach on time and scores a goal. Komori then switches Jin on the team opposite to Iwashimizu's team and the game resumes. Komori and Yuji discuss how Miyuki's team is playing smoothly and how Miyuki is a terrifying player even though he's only a first year. Miyuki's attack gets blocked while Jin runs through the ground and manages the ball. Jin recalls that a flanker should be the one who's always present everywhere, so taking this advice, he tries to rush quickest at the ball. He tackles Miyuki, who notices that Jin's trick is that he seems to be focusing on people's torso to figure their movements. Once he figures out his technique, he grabs the ball and Jin also rushes at him to tackle him, but just then, the coaches stop the match. They announce the end of the practice match, and afterwards both teams feast on food like a bunch of apes. Miyuki keeps whining about not playing more with Jin, and Sekizun compliments Iwashimizu's gameplay. Sekizun and Hakiauji catch Jin and Iwashimizu in the club and tell them to go home. Seeing them reading through rugby tactics, Hakiauji gets nostalgic and remembers himself and Sekizun back in the day. He decides it's time to yap and starts telling them about their past. Back to the first year in high school for Sekizun and Hakiauji. Hakiauji bumps into Sekizun for the first time and immediately tries to recruit him into the rugby club, but Sekizun isn't interested. Sometime later, he stalks Sekizun like a degenerate and tries to convince him to join, giving him a whole list of reasons. Sekizun doesn't fall for it and goes on his merry way. Sometime later, Sekizun finally gives in to the annoyance and goes to the rugby field. Hakiauji gives him a ball and Sekizun throws it back. Seeing his throw, Hakiauji starts hyping him up and tries to convince him that he's a genius. Sekizun tells him that despite his build, he hasn't ever had any success with sports and absolutely sucks at them. He turns the tides on the fatso and almost convinces him to start a sumo club together. Hakiauji tells him that only he can help the rugby club and he is desperately needed. Sekizun finally accepts his pleading but takes it back when he sees the lazy rugby club members. Hakiauji tells him that he won't give up on persuading him and will keep annoying him. Later, Hakiauji catches him after a track race and again tries to convince him to join the team. Sekizun tells him that he won't join a team that doesn't try their best or play a sport that is unserious. Hakiauji grabs him by the collar and gets in his face, saying that rugby is anything but an unserious game. Time passes and Sekizun finds a love letter in his locker, which leaves him shocked. He runs to the back of the school to read it and is surprised to read that his admirer wants him to join the rugby club. At the end of the letter, he reads Hakiauji's name and realizes that he's been had while Hakiauji laughs from afar. He goes to the club to reject the master pranksman for the last time, but when he sees Hakiauji training hard in the rain, he changes his mind. At last, Sekizun asks Hakiauji to teach him rugby. At the end of their training, Jino, Hakiauji, and Iwashimizu talk about how they should ask Komori to take them to a restaurant again, so they go to find him but learn that he has already left. Later, Komori goes to meet his old college friend named Yujiro and they go to a restaurant owned by a junior of theirs. Yujiro is surprised to know that Komori is coaching a high school team and they talk about how Yujiro has also been coaching for the past 20 years. Yujiro mentions how he has been watching Komori's blog while on the other side. The boys also discuss how plain Komori's blog is. Komori talks about how the team is still very weak but is made of hard workers and how the captain is very optimistic. They talk about how Komori's wife can't have kids and Komori mentions how he really wanted to teach his kids rugby. They say their farewells and Yujiro mentions how X Day is coming. The next day, a team member Keta goes to Yoshida, who a little while later tells Sekizun about how Keta quit. Meanwhile, many team members are standing in front of Komori and he realizes that this is what Yujiro meant by X Day. Sekizun runs off to Keta and tries to convince him to stay. Keta explains how the training is too much for him and how he has even lost his appetite. Sekizun asks him to come cheer for them when they reach Hanazono. At the practice, they all gather around and Komori reveals that they'll be attending a 5-day training program at the start of August in Sugadera. Iwashimizu explains to Jin how Sugadera is a place where all the rugby teams hold a training camp and play against each other to train. The practice resumes afterwards and Jin tells Iwashimizu to help him practice so he can beat Ryuji. Sekizun tells Jin to try tackling him too, and he treats him very harshly. Later, in the locker room they discuss how Sekizun was very scary today and they realize how he might be blaming himself for how Keta quit. Sekizun stops running to talk to Komori, who tells him how it's not his fault and how they should keep doing what they're doing if they want to win. He also reminds him how he isn't alone. While Hakiauji reads a message with a worried face, the team continues with their training. Ebumi and Aiz get in a scuffle but Aiz looks out of it. After club activities end, Aiz meets up with Hakiauji and they go to Aiz's house together. The place looks like a mess and suddenly, Aiz's brother barges inside the house and starts to berate him for not offering the guest anything. His brother rudely greets him and says that they met a year before. He says that since he doesn't remember Hakiauji's name, he'll call him Piggy. While he's not exactly wrong by the laws of weight, Aiz reminds his brother Hakiauji's name. Hakiauji asks his brother to grant permission for Aiz to go on a training camp with them, but he refuses. His brother starts ranting that both their parents passed away when they were young, and he's the sole breadwinner of the family. Seeing Hakiauji's resolve, Aiz himself puts his head down and begs his brother to let him go. His brother makes fun of him and asks if both of them are a couple. Aiz loses it and throws a glass of juice at Four Eyes. He regains himself, makes Hakiauji leave the apartment, telling him he's quitting the club. The next day, Hakiauji looks for him on the ground but doesn't see him. Ebumi asks about him, but Hakiauji doesn't spill the beans and simply says that he'll be back. Aiz, after spending the day in the park doing nothing, goes back him to his brother, who throws his wallet at him and tells him to go buy something. At the store, when Aiz sees ice cream, he remembers his teammates and gets teary-eyed. On his way back, he bumps into Ebumi, who figures out what's been happening with him. He gives him a wad of cash and tells him to throw it at his brother. Back at home, his brother sees his dirty rugby clothes and can't help but be proud. On the other hand, Aiz tells Ebumi that his brother is a good person, but Ebumi says that these 3 years are the only times they have and they have to keep the team going forward. Aiz and Ebumi bond on their way back, on what looks to be like a budding new friendship. Ebumi leaves Aiz with his brother, who was waiting for him outside the complex after telling him that the cash is just loan, so he has to pay him back someday. Jin eagerly packs for training camp the next day and then tells Ueshimizu to come practice with him. Meanwhile, Yumino and Keijo's manager Yasaka shop for the training camp and spot Sekizun and Hakiauji shopping for some desserts. Sekizun tells them that they are going to Komori's house for a pre-training camp meeting and lunch. Jin and Ueshimizu come across them and Jin begs to go with them to eat lunch at Komori's house, but Sekizun refuses him. The other team members spend their time leisurely in the meanwhile, while some even come to school to take extra supplementary classes. Ebumi comes across Keijo's member while he is shopping for some adult comics. Some of the team members even go out to eat, and slowly all of them get a call from Jin. Ueshimizu tells Jin that he cannot get in touch with Uharano, so they both go to his house where he's walking his dog and tell him to come to lunch with them to Komori's house. With everyone gathered with him, Jin then reaches Komori's house just as Sekizun arrives there and tells him that the whole team can eat lunch now. When Komori sees the whole gang of hungry apes, he tells them to leave, but his wife Yumi invites them in for food. The team then buys food by themselves and starts cooking their own food since they are used to it, while Yumi enjoys their company since they bring a very energetic energy. They all set up a grill in the backyard and start grilling as if their life depends on it. The gang fills their stomach with meat and the rice that Yumi prepares for them. Yumino helps her out too, and Yumi then gives Sekizun some more rice. Yoshida apologizes to Komori for barging on him like this, but he doesn't seem to mind for his wife's sake. Yumino gives them both food to eat, and he then tells the team that they are going to be having matches daily now. He tells them that they need practice to be prepared and that they are not a losing team, but from now on, they will be prepared for everything, even death. This hypes up the team, especially for the training camp in Sugadera. Even Yumi wishes to come, seeing their energetic faces, but Komori tells her to stay where she is. Later at night, she keeps requesting Komori to come with them, but Komori tells her to not be so selfish. She then gets distracted by a TV channel and forgets about it. The team arrives at Sugadera the next day, which is swarmed with multiple teams. Jin notices that even Sagami has a match the same day, and they all then arrive at their inn, which is run down due to their budget. The innkeeper expects the team to be very rowdy due to their past behavior, but Komori assures him that the team will behave this time. He then orders everyone to drop their luggages in their rooms and to run to the field, where they will immediately start practicing. The team then warms up as they run to the field, and Komori then tells them to practice running passes for 1 hour. After they have done their drill, Komori tells them that they have a match with Tenjiku School, and that since they have been practicing even before the match, they have closed the gap between them even before the match started. Tenjiku arrives at the ground too and thinks that the opposite team is someone else, while Jin thinks that they should practice even more before the match. A girl from their inn named Miki arrives and gives them desserts, which freshens the boys up. Sagami's boys also come to watch their match, and the team then greets Tenjiku's team. Their vice captain Sunao fangirls over Sekizun's hair like a little child, and one of their members, Renpei, comments about how they are playing such an unknown team. The match begins with Jin on the bench, and off the bat, Renpei kicks the ball and sends it flying to the other side, but of the newbies, Kifune stops it and kicks it back to the center. Once again, Renpei gets the ball and kicks it towards the goal, but Kifune catches it and kicks it back. Renpei begins realizing that Kifune is very skilled despite appearing plain, while Komori also comments about Kifune balancing the match. Tenjiku's team notices this and decides to change their tactics. In the next play, both teams scrum against each other and Tenjiku manages to steal the ball. Rather than relying on Renpei's long kicks, Sunao and Renpei kick the ball between each other, but at the last minute, Renpei kicks the ball going against his team's advice and Kifune gets the ball again. He kicks it inside and as a result both teams face each other once again. Tenjiku gets the ball again and throws it to Renpei, but Ebumi tackles him and manages to stop him. The game continues and the team then uses sumo wrestling techniques taught by Komori to tackle Tenjiku. The boys get through Tenjiku's defense and get inside the 22-meter line but are quickly shut down by their defense. On the next turn, they pass the ball into Sekizun, but he is stopped by Tenjiku's number 8, named Seki. Aiz runs behind Sekizun, who passes him the ball and continues the play and trashes one of the defenders. All the players scramble, and by end of the tussle, the boys get a kick try. Renpei gets frustrated at the easygoing nature of his teammates as Sunao catches him being angry. The kick is taken, and the ball lands with one of the team's members. Tenjiku finally gets the ball, but it's none other than the pissed king, Renpei. He tells his teammates to buzz off and directly kicks the ball way out in the goalpost, resulting in a drop goal. The captain argues with Renpei after the shot because of doing whatever he pleases. Renpei gets angry and grabs his by the shirt, but Sunao gets between them and breaks it apart. Komori watches from the sidelines and determines that while Tenjiku has talent, it is scattered from the inside because it is a new team. The first half whistle is called and Tenjiku is in a 3-point lead. During the huddle, the Tenjiku captain asks Sunao to keep Renpei in check, but Sunao claps back and says the captain shouldn't say that and Renpei wants to win the most out of them all. On the other side, Komori says that he's proud of how they're playing, but he'll make some substitutions since he wants everyone to get experience. With that, Jin comes in and the second half starts. His impact is immediately noticeable as he displays fast sweeping after a teammate gets tackled. While playing, Jin recalls Komori's instructions during halftime and applies them to his fullest. One of the boys gets the ball but gets cornered soon after. He panics and kicks the ball in the air. Tenjiku's player gets under the ball and grabs it, but comes running the freight train Sekizun, who tackles him as he lands and steals the ball. He pushes the gap instantly and gets the try after crossing the line. Tenjiku's captain tells his player to keep his head high, but Renpei calls him weak. While going back, Renpei catches Sunao standing by himself menacingly. Sunao recalls how he saw Renpei for the first time when he was joining a rugby academy, and he wanted to be his friend from that moment on. He recalls how Renpei was always too good for his age, but his foul mouth made him unliked by everyone, so he always used to stand up for him. In the present, Sunao tries to motivate his team and Renpei finds it annoying while lazing in the back lines. He talks to himself about how bad his team is and doesn't even try to stop Ebumi from scoring. Sunao asks him why he is not trying and Renpei just replies that he is sick of rugby, so Sunao tells him to leave if he is not going to play. He goes to his teammates and even tells them that they are all at fault for not trying their hardest. The match resumes and the Tenjiku team starts gaining ground after Sunao's words hit them hard. They finally manage to score, but Renpei is still dazed out in the back lines. Komori decides to send out Uharano, who tells Ebumi to follow his instructions properly. He whispers something to Jin and the game resumes, where Jin goes directly for Sunao based on Uharano's words. Sunao passes the ball, but Uharano intercepts it and kicks it forward to Ebumi, who gets accidentally fouled. Uharano gives out instructions to Iwashimizu this time, and Hakiauji is about to throw the pass when Jin starts shouting for the ball. The Tenjiku plays all focus on him, but Hakiauji passes the ball to Iwashimizu, who runs forward and ends up in a maul. Iwashimizu tries not to break down with pressure from both sides as both the teams push and Jin manages to get the ball. Jin finally sees the line and Uharano tells him to place it down, so he does. Jin is shocked that he managed to score and almost ends up crying, but Uharano slaps him back to reality. They even manage to increase the score further, successfully kicking the ball into the goal. Tenjiku tries to close the gap by scoring again, but Jin ends up tackling him and the game ends with Tenjiku's loss. After the match, both teams bow heads and the game is called. Tenjiku surprisingly takes it well and go meet with the team's players. Sekizun tells Tenjiku's captain that this is the first time they've won a game. Sunao tries to go talk to Renpei, but scouts stop him and tell him that his ceiling is high. Seeing this, Renpei remembers when his boyfriend Sunao gave him a good luck charm, and even earlier when they were kids when Sunao put the idea of playing rugby in his mind. Sunao gets a business card, meets up with Renpei, and the young couple go home together. After the game, the team gathers for team dinner at the end. The vibe seems unusual for a team that just won, so to break the ice, Komori starts talking and says he's sorry for not making them win even though he's been with them for 3 months. Sekizun gets up and politely thanks all the team players and staff. Komori tells him to let loose since only their boys are in the inn, and Sekizun drops his guard and starts cheesing like a kid. The team follows suit and relaxes, digging in the meal. Yumino and Mickey set up bed together and start gossiping about boys. Yumino asks Mickey who she thinks is handsome in their team, but Mickey takes the easy way out and says that all of them are handsome. They talk for a bit, and Mickey reveals the truth that the fatso Hirota is actually her type. Who would have thought? Later that night, Yoshida and Komori go out to go drinks, and Komori tells him that he's also invited another guest, Tenjiku's coach. All three gather and get some beer. Komori says that it must be tough to connect with the team while being such a young coach, and he agrees. Tenjiku's coach vents that they all used to listen to him but stopped as the team got stronger. He tells that in all honesty, he wanted to see Tenjiku lose so they would be humbled. Yoshida gets more drunk as the conversation goes on. Komori gives the coach some advice that as the coach, he needs to be one step ahead of his team. They are suddenly joined by Keijo's coach, who asks for even more beer. All the coaches get drunk together as they struggle to structure sentences together. The team wins another match against Siki School, and some of them start boasting about their strength. Afterwards, Komori reminds them that they shouldn't let 2 wins get to their head, since the purpose of the camp is to figure out their style and what works for them. They play the next game with Keijo School and lose that match. On the way back, the team comes across a tackling match, and Keijo team meets up with them too. Even Sagami's team comes up to them, and Jin proposes that they should all hold a tackling contest after tackling once. It gets decided that 3 members from each team will tackle, and the team with the highest score will win. Tera goes first, followed by one of Sagami's player, and Sekizun tackles at last, with the scores tied in Sekizun and Tera's favor. The others keep joining the match, and after all the teams are done tackling, Hirota goes missing even though it's his turn at last. Reita finds him at a ramen shop and somehow lures him to the tackling contest. He ends up scoring the highest and the team wins the match. Afterwards, Hirota chases after Reita at the inn, since he had lied to him that he would ice cream if he wins the contest. Jin leaves the inn to do his secret training and comes across Kifune, who seems to be making a prayer to the rugby ball. Kifune then kicks the ball, and noticing Jin, he gets really embarrassed. He explains to him that he used to play football, but even though he had good prediction skills, he didn't have much stamina. Later, when he joined rugby, he didn't want to suck at it, so he was praying that the ball would go over as a good luck charm. Jin finds it really cool, and Komori, who overhears this sob story, also likes it. He then tells the boys to catch the ball despite the darkness and kicks it high. They are unable to catch it, and he keeps kicking it till Kifune finally manages to catch it. He tells Kifune to keep training to catch the ball in dark, even if it doesn't help him in the actual match. He then leaves while they all keep practicing in the dark. The next day, the team wins another match. On the way back, Jin drags Iwashimizu to a crepe place where they come across Ryuji from Ryoan team stuffing his face in a crepe. The Ryoan team joins him, and Jin introduces himself to the team. Later, as they are about to go away, Yoshida asks Ryoan team's coach to play a match with their team in 2 days. Ryoan's coach accepts Yoshida's request but says that they'll play their second string team instead. Yoshida is happy to oblige. Later at the team meeting, Komori praises Yoshida and tells the boys to get their energy up, since they will play against the absolute best. The boys lose their next match, partly due to Jin not performing well. After the match, he asks his senior what he did wrong, but he punches him on the head instead. Another senior explains to Jin that while he is really fast, his positioning is still weak, which is letting his game down. He tells him that basically, he has to protect his turf during the game, which he fails to do usually. Eyes join them, and they start doing flanker drills with the both of them. They keep practicing till evening time, and the senior drags both Jin and Eyes through the mud. Kakiauji arrives at the ground, bringing rice balls for the tired boys. Rivaling top pranksters of the YouTube golden age, the master prankster strikes again as he put tons of wasabi in one of the rice balls, and one of the seniors becomes the unlucky victim. Back at the inn, the boys play rock, paper, scissors to decide who gets in the hot bath first, and the forwards win. Uharano starts ranting about going in the hot bath and starts the revolution of the backs, but the captain abandons the rest and tells the forwards to advance. They meet Komori on the way, who says that he'll join the backs in the bath, so his biggest fan Sekizun changes plans and says they all go in together. Afterwards, Uharano meets up with Suwa, and they get into a small argument because Suwa doesn't like his nonchalant attitude. Suwa starts venting to Uharano about how he tries his hardest but doesn't gain any strength. He continues that he's frustrated that everybody is going ahead and leaving him behind. Uharano tells him to stop nagging and shows him a video of the Japanese national team's captain. He tells him that the captain is a slow runner, but that doesn't stop him from playing however he likes. Uharano says that blaming yourself is what his brother did as well, but he always seemed like he was having more fun. Suwa reflects on it and goes on a run. While running, he notices in the distance that Uharano is also on a run and gets embarrassed because of what he said earlier. In the next game, Matsuo performs very poorly, and at night, the boys play card games while Matsuo watches out the window depressed. Iwashimizu talks to someone on the phone while standing outside the dorm, and Miyuki appears suddenly out of nowhere, which scares him. Inside, all the seniors are in a room and Matsuo is also called. Outside, Miyuki and Iwashimizu discuss how much Taro likes Sekizun and how all the seniors must be having a meeting right now. They see a vending machine and go to get some drinks, but a hand pops out from behind the washing machine next to them, which scares them. Jin pops out from behind, thinking about how he can practice using the washing machine. He explains to them what he was thinking about, and Miyuki suggests that he practices with him. The three just run side by side while passing to each other, and they discuss how they will beat each other, and Miyuki tells them to catch him. The three play around, and Ebumi, who is on a run, wonders what they're doing. The three lay down, and Iwashimizu brings up the first time he met Miyuki when he was told by Miyuki to play rugby. They return to the dorm, and Matsuo also comes back before telling them that they have a match against Ryoin tomorrow. The next day, Jin meets Sakito, and Ryoin's coach tells them how they'll be having a match against the second string team. Sakito introduces Jin to the second string team's flanker Mikado, and both the short kings don't like each other. The match begins, and Mikado does a low tackle against Sekizun, and Ryoin manages to take the ball, but Jin manages to stop them with the same kind of tackle. Mikado is pissed that Jin copied him, but Goon states that his friend taught him that tackle. They all huddle up for a scrum, and Ryoin gets the ball. Uharano tries to get the ball, but he gets fooled by Ryoin's tactics, and Jin tries to tackle again but gets jumped over. They manage to defend somehow, but Jin is all pumped up and refuses to lose. He talks about how he cannot beat big guys, but he can't let a short dude like Mikado beat him. He vows that he will defeat Mikado no matter what happens. One of the seniors meets with Matsuo and tells him to come with him. He takes him to the vending machine area, where the seniors are gathered around like an episode of Peaky Blinders. They start being frank with him and directly ask him why he hasn't been serious in the games and has been slacking. Matsuo admits easily that he's slacking and reveals the truth. He says that he's given up on the dream and doesn't believe they can make Hanazono. Sekizun grabs his wrist and asks about doing rugby as college together, but Matsuo says that he will be quitting rugby soon. The next day, the boys play Uharano instead of Matsuo against Ryoin. The match starts and he performs well. He passes the ball to a senior and asks him to kick it ahead, which works out. On the next play, the other team fakes a throw, but the boys catch onto it and retains the ball. Uharano gets the ball and is stopped at the perimeter by their elite defender, who tackles him. As he's falling, he passes it to Suwa, who with a defender on his back, takes the ball home for the team. Yumino celebrates taking the first point. Reita meets Sekizun and tells him that it's unfair that they are angry at Matsuo. He pleads Sekizun and says that let's win this match to show Matsuo it's possible. On the next play, Ryoin's number 9 intercepts a pass and starts running. Jin tries to stop him, but trips on the way. Sekizun comes swooping in his stead and tackles 2 of Ryoin's players. Seeing this, Matsuo's eyes are opened and he gains a bit of life back. With a sweet 1-2 play from Jin and Iwashimizu, they stop the Ryoin attack on its feet and the team gets a turn from the ref. The team is in good spirits, but Komori knows that there's still a lot of work to be done. Ryoin gets the ball again, but Sekizun yet again stops the attack right on the spot. Hakiauji talks to Sekizun and tells him to stop looking at Matsuo after every play. He says that they're here to win, so he has to focus. On the next play, Hakiauji throws the ball but fakes Ryoin by passing it to Sekizun, who again passes it to Big Lord Hakiauji himself. Hakiauji swifts and turns at max speed and is able to reach the line. Uharano then makes the kick and the team goes up 12-0 against the mighty Ryoin. The halftime whistle blows and the boys are up by 12 points. They still don't let it get to their heads, and Komori notices how there's nothing left for him to say to them. He just tells them how they're doing well and to continue focusing on the second half. On Ryoin's side, their coach only tells them to take the other team seriously because they're only losing because they underestimated their opponents. The second half begins and Ryoin's coach talks about how all the Jin-Ku members are trying their best to win while gaining confidence. Ryoin players manage to get their heads back into the game and manage to score. The score reaches 12-7 and Ruji walks up to the coach, asking to be subbed in so he can play. He joins the game and everyone is shocked. Ryoin's coach plans to break Jin-Ku's confidence and Ruji manages to get the ball from Iwashimizu. He starts running forward while throwing off anyone that comes in his way, and doesn't slow down no matter how many guys hold him. He manages to score and tells the boys how it's nice that they're trying their best to win. He says that it's important to try and kill the opponents and that he tries to do the same. Komori sees everyone disheartened and walks up to them before throwing a pass at Sekizun. He tells them how they're still capable enough of taking a pass from a national level player, so they shouldn't stop fighting. The game resumes, but they're still unable to stop Ryuji, and Sakito talks about how he does not like the way Ryuji plays. Ryuji continues scoring against the boys, and they're unable to stop him even during the final play. Ryuji walks up to Sekizun and says that he's looking forward to facing them again. After the game, the boys are brought to Davos Hills, where Komori tells them to sprint till the top, where they'll have a meeting. The boys start sprinting while the seniors discuss how it's their last time at Davos. They finally reach the top, and Komori and Yoshida arrive a while later with Yoshida half dead. At the top, Komori forgets the speech he wanted to give, so he tells Sekizun to come up and say a few words. Sekizun talks about how he gave his best in the past 5 days, and all the boys mention how they went all out in the past 5 days. Komori tells them that they have 2 hours to play around as much as they want before they leave, so the boys start playing around before they go back to their normal routines. That's it for today, my fellow men of culture. Like and subscribe the channel for more plot-filled recaps.